We already have another guest on the line to discuss the horrific behavior of Russia in Ukraine and actually elsewhere in the world. Hello, Yevheniia.
Hello. Thank you for inviting me.
Sure. You're a professional, but my first question, a coalition of Belarusian investigative journalists behind the border of the Belarusian Investigative Center stated that members of the family President of the Republic of Belarus, Alexander Lukashenko, are personally responsible for the deportation of children from Ukraine. Is that true?
Well, apparently, Lukashenko had been a good partner in crime, I would say, with President Putin. So, yes, he is responsible for the deportation as well. And you might also see this. I can't even find a word because I think it's another war crime when they dragged Ukrainian kids and brought some so-called diplomats from, I don't know, Palestine, for example, and some countries that support Russia, trying to explain, to find explanations why these kids are in Belarus and not returning to Ukraine. And it looks really ugly, I would say. And just in a few days ago in Strasbourg, in Parliamentary Assembly of Council of Europe, we had testimonies of Ukrainian kids that were kidnapped. They were taken to Russia, and finally, well, the story was a happy end because their father was able to travel to Russia and take them. He's the father of 3 kids.
Great.
And he now lives with them in Riga, in Latvia. This family is from Mariupol. It's a very famous story, and I think it's important for different members of parliaments of different countries to hear these stories, not just me to tell these stories or other members of parliaments of Ukraine, but to hear the testimonies.
Yeah, sure, and it's lovely to hear that because Riga is my native city. I've been born and raised in Riga. I have Latvian citizenship, so it is great that my country and my people in my city are helping in any way possible, and in this way just as well. My next question is, I understand that Ukraine cannot yet reveal all the details of the exchange of prisoners of war and the return of deported children. What I would like to know, what I can, what is the role of our foreign partners and allies in this process, if any?
Well, regarding the exchange of prisoners of war, it's mainly a job of our intelligence, and they have these lists for the exchange. And of course, the more people from Russia, soldiers from Russia, especially of the high ranking, we get when they either, come to Ukrainian side or they are being captured during the battle, the better chances are to return our people. And of course, the huge problem is that international humanitarian organizations, neither United Nations, neither the Red Cross, the International Committee of Red Cross, do not have access, I would say, do not try to get access to our prisoners of war that are being kept in Russia, because Russians in Ukraine, they're well fed, they get the medical treatment, journalists can access and actually have interviews with them, and no one actually came and looked what's going on with prisoners of war from Ukraine. And that's very sad because it's a diagnosis for all these international organizations with billions and billions of budgets.
Absolutely. I'm with you. I agree with you. I mean, you made the right point here. I mean, they're not trying to. I mean, they will probably be able to if they would have enough will time and effort invested in that. But Yevheniia, why do you think this is happening? Why they are not trying to get a proper access to Ukrainian POVs? Is there just a bureaucracy, or there's something else, or someone else is standing maybe behind that?
Well, they claim that Russia does not give the access and they need security guarantees when they travel, either to the temporary occupied territories, either to the mainland Russia. And as well, of course, there's also the huge possibility that the Russians would try to show as so-called Potemkin villages,
Right.
not given the access to the real places where the prisoners of war are captured. But we see the reluctance of international organizations in many fields, and it's not just also in Ukraine. We see that throughout the global, throughout the planet. For example, United Nations, is not fulfilling mandate, and now we come closely to the problem of the reform of United Nations and at least the Security Council, because the Security Council still lives with the rules after the Second World War, when you had these few countries that gained the possibility of the veto, and they still hold it. And actually, Russia inherited this veto right just after the Soviet Union. Although Russia never sent documents to be a part of United Nations. Actually, Ukraine and Belarus, being the Soviet republics, they were members of United Nations from the very beginning. And Russia just sat into the chair when Soviet Union collapsed.
Well, I'm actually, in regard with the United Nations, what can I say? How can I comment that? Russia was presiding over the United Nations Security Council. So obviously, you are expecting the world to believe that there are no mechanisms for modern politicians just to stand and walk away out of the room without having any discussion with a brutal thug that is presiding the United Nations Security Council. But that's something else. The United Nations Security Council is yet to find a new form, a new structure, and I'm sure that the world will be able to find a new structure for it. But what I would like to talk about now is the cynicism of Russia's statements in the United Nations. Just don't know any limits. Of course, I'm not surprised. But the permanent representative of Russia to the UN, Vasil Nebenzia, stated that near the village of Rosa in the Kharkiv region, more than hundreds of people died due to the Russian attack at the funeral of, I just quoting him, high-ranking Ukrainian Nazi. Well, of course, Russia attempts to find ways to sort of legalize its dirty deeds and ways in Ukraine. But my question is, why is Russia in the United Nations Security Council after all? Or rather asked, is Europe that impotent? No mechanism to avoid the absurdity and no possibility and yet political will to invent, to create these mechanisms right here and now because they're urgently needed.
The reform of the Security Council had been into the focus in different countries for at least last year. But I don't think the reform could be in the way just putting a few other chairs to the table. There have been thoughts maybe adding some more countries from the global south, from Africa, but it will not, give any possibility to actions of the Security Council. For example, the bright example of the non-action is the tribunal, the establishment of the tribunal to prosecute the crime of aggression. The Tribunal for Rwanda genocide or Tribunal for former Yugoslavia was created by the Security Council, but in that time, no countries vetoed it. And actually, that probably was the last actions of the Security Council in regards of the just justice and at least just peace, how you can get closer to it. But in the terms of the international tribunal that has to be, of course, established for the crime of aggression of Russian Federation, the Security Council is blocked. And it's not actually the problem just of the United Nations. And in the terms of United Nations, we have 193 countries, and we at least see that a bit less than half support Russia, for example, in voting for the Council for Human Rights. And it's outrageous. This vote happened just maybe a week or 5 days after the brutal attack on Hroza. By the way, the number of the casualties had risen up to 56 and 3 people are still missing. So probably it's sadly, but it could be 59, and all of them were civilians. So we have these countries that are being bribed or threatened by Russia, especially when the vote is secret. And in this way, Russia is trying to find some leverage on especially poor countries, developing countries, for their votes. So I think it's a challenge not just for Ukraine, not just for Europe, but for all the world that called itself democratic.
Thank you very much for your fair, clear, and very well-argumented answer to my quite a provocative question. Now, by no means I want Ukraine to be doing the same, what Russia is doing. If you can't make any friends, make enemies, or bribe them. Sending 5 vehicles to Africa, that's a red flag for Russian politics. And let's do it otherwise. Let's make firm friends. Let's not blackmail. Let's help Ukraine to build a diplomacy of a new level that suits Ukraine as a nation that is brave and courageous enough to fight this war. And let us all help the world to understand that it needs to keep on supporting Ukraine, because this is the war of civilization, if you like. I believe it.
And we're holding this wall that we're actually this wall that is guarding the West from these barbarians.
I absolutely agree with you. Thank you for your time. Thank you, Yevheniia, and for what you do.
Thank you for inviting.
And for your
My
bright
pleasure,
and clear explanations. Thank you so very much. Hope to see you soon with us.